Hey guys, we've had a lot of you hit us up and ask if we could do a video on how to level a ceramic coating. So today we want to go over all the tips and tricks on how to properly level ceramic coating, no matter which beadlock product you are using from our product line. So let's get into it. All right, let's go over what's on the cart. We are going to be applying Beadlock Pro in this demonstration. We have our applicator pad, and then we like to use a 3-towel system when we're leveling coating. The first 2 towels we use are a low pile towel. These are numbered, they're from auto fiber, let you know which section of the towel you've used when you're leveling. The first towel is what we use to what we call break the coating. The second towel does the majority of our leveling. And then the third and final towel just ensures we leave no high spots in any of our edges, corners, and body lines. Now that we've gone over what's on the cart, I would like to speak specifically to the Shine Supply coatings. There's a lot of different coatings on the market. I want to speak specifically to the leveling process of our coatings. It is somewhat relative to other coatings on the market, but this is going to be a specific conversation for our coatings because those are what I understand the most. So we have Relock, Beadlock Pro, Beadlock Marine, and our Beadlock Black. Those are our paint coatings. What coatings consist of is a mixture of solids and solvent. When we apply coating to the surface, the solids, which are the ceramic material, is bonding to the surface, and the solvents are flashing off, and that's what we're leveling. We're leveling the solvents that have flashed off and left the hard, solid material on the surface. So that gives you an understanding of what we're actually leveling off. So that's what's in this bottle, a mixture of solids and solvents. Now, the less amount of solids, the higher solvent content, that would be something referring to like our Relock. It's a shorter term coating, doesn't have as much solids, it's not providing as strong a barrier as some of our other coatings. That one is going to be much easier to level. The less solids, the higher solvent, the easier it is to level. The higher solid content, you are going to have a little bit more specific leveling process with those kind of coatings. Now, let's go ahead. I'm going to shake this bottle up. Let's apply the coating to a section and get into how we're going to properly level this and how you can decide the time frames on when you're going to properly level a coating. There's a lot of different factors, but I'll do my best to kind of break down and give you framework to give you an understanding so that you can know, depending on which environment you're in, you're going to have an understanding on how to properly level the coating. I always, when I have a new applicator, I load up a little heavy initially just to soak the applicator good, and then moving forward, I just apply enough coating to wet out the top of the applicator so that as I'm going over the surface, I don't have what I call pad drag. If you feel it real grabby, you know you have not applied enough coating. That's a great tip for applying. Most guys in particular, or gals, you're gonna tend to maybe overuse when you're just getting used to applying coating, you're gonna over apply. So I just apply enough to that my applicator is gonna glide smoothly. The sections you're going to be able to coat are dependent on environment you're in. Now, being that we're in California, it's about maybe low 70 degrees right now. There's hardly any humidity. I'm gonna be able to do a larger section before I level the coating. There's 2 factors that depict how large of a section you can coat before you have to level, and that's temperature and humidity. So depending on where you're at in the nation, those 2 factors are going to determine how large a section you can coat and the time frame before you have to level. So the hotter the temperature and the more humidity, even if you're inside a shop, that's going to cause the solvent to flash off the surface faster, meaning you're going to have to level quicker. So I can't give you an exact time frame because those 2 variables are going to change depending on where you're at in the nation. But what I can tell you is that you have to perform a test spot. So you're going to want to go smaller first, start your timer, watch that area, watch the solvents begin to flash off. We'll get more into this as we level, but you're going to time that area. You're going to do your test swipe spot that we're going to get into in a minute as well. And you're going to frame that timeout on when you had to come in and level that section. You're gonna take that framework of that timing and you're gonna factor in how large a section you can do in that amount of time before you start leveling. So what we're gonna do, again, factor in that we are in California, the temperature I just told you, no humidity. I'm gonna apply it to a section. I'm gonna have Colby start his stopwatch and we're gonna see how long we have before we actually have to level the coating. So I'm gonna start in this section and I'm going to go all the way to this door seam. I like to at least try to address a section of a panel rather than stop in the middle of a panel. That gets a little more challenging to know where you stopped and where you have to start again. So I'm gonna go from here to here on this seam. So you see how I boxed in my edges first, and then I'm just going nice overlapping passes. This is a universal tip. No matter what brand coating you're using, this is not gonna change. It's very straightforward, but it's a great way to protect yourself from having gaps where you missed applying the coating. Box it in, nice overlapping passes. I like to step back, I have my good lighting, I give it a little look over, and I look for any gaps where I can see through to the paint, and that knows I overlapped that area and I missed it with the coating. I'll have to come back in and apply in that section. All right, so we're coming up close to a minute. I'm seeing the coating rainbow up really nicely. That's what it does as the solvent is starting to evaporate off the surface and it's leaving all the hard, solid, raw material behind, which is creating the protection. That's what's bonding to the paint, and my solvent is flashing off, leaving those solids behind. So the swipe test I do is I take 2 fingers, I will put in the towel just like this, and I like to come into an area and I just do a little swipe. What this does, I check where I've swiped. If it looks really smeary, I know I need to wait longer before I start leveling the coating. The smear means the coating is still bonding and my solvent is still flashing off. Majority of coatings failure comes from leveling it prematurely. So this is so important, the leveling process. You wipe it off too soon, you have not allowed those solids to bond properly, and you're basically just pulling maybe half of these solids back off the surface. So the swipe test is very important. It was slightly smeary, so I probably waited another 20 seconds while I just talked to you guys. I'm gonna do another swipe test in a second section. All right, we're breaking pretty clear. Plus, even when I swipe, I feel a little bit of grabbiness. What is our time frame, Colby, right now?
2 minutes.
All right, so we're at about 2 minutes. Now, if you were down, let's say Tennessee, midsummer, you got high temperatures, high humidity, your flash time will most likely be less than a minute. It could be around like 30, 45 seconds. But again, if you just follow those tips I gave you guys, do that swipe test, see when you swipe, it breaks clear, you can see the clarity of the paint and not a lot of smearing, you know it's ready to rock. So to level, I'm gonna do the same thing that I did when I was applying. I'm gonna come around my edges, I'm gonna box it in. See how I'm just doing one pass? Plus right now, when I come to this edge, instead of pull the towel up, I'm gonna change my body position right here and come right up that line so I don't push some of the coating that I'm leveling onto that panel. Okay, now I've boxed in my edges, now I'll just come through the middle. Again, just one pass, medium down pressure. I'm not doing circles, I'm not doing really fast movement. All I'm doing is just trying to break that initial layer of solvent, pull it up on my towel. Now I'm gonna grab my second towel, exact same process. I felt a slight tug under my towel, which shows me I'm really in that sweet spot to level the coating. I like having that nice little grabby feel. That means my coating has really bonded. If you find yourself doing a lot of back and forth passes, trying to level off the solvent and it looking kind of smeary, that's when you know you're wiping it off prematurely. You have not allowed those solids to bond. So you can see that was just 2 towels, not a lot of passes. I have very minimal streaking, some little areas. That's what my third towel is for. but that's when I know I wiped it off in that sweet spot. In my opinion, you guys, that swipe test is what really lets you know if you're catching the coating in that nice window to level it. So all my third towel is to ensure I have not pushed it on an adjacent panel. I don't have any around my edges, especially body lines like this. That's a tricky area where coating can kind of get pushed into when you're leveling. And this third towel just really helps ensure that you're not gonna have any high spots. So with the third towel, I'm gonna go outside the area that I applied to make sure I pull in any coating, any solvent, that I pushed onto other areas. So I'm gonna start outside and then work my way in. So I'm gonna hang it over onto this tail light. So there's a good chance there's a little bit on there. I'm gonna use my pointer finger to really cut this line in tight. Same with this panel. I'm gonna do a nice overhang to grab any that came onto that panel and then come through the middle. Very light arm pressure on this final few passes. Why? Because think about it. I have solids that are trying to set up on the finish. If I push too hard with these final passes with this leveling towel, sometimes you can put streaks in the coating just from pushing because the fibers of the towel are actually leaving the streaks in the coating. So I want to be really light with my arm pressure on these final passes. I'm going to flip the towel and do one more just quick overview. Just barely the weight of my hand pressure. And then I like to give it a quick look over. This is where I'm a firm believer in slower is faster, meaning if I'm thorough with each step, I tend to not have any backtracking at the end of the job where I have to go back and fix something that I missed. All right, so I'm gonna do one more section for you guys and just kind of walk through the process again. While I'm putting this on, I just want to talk through a few things. Our beadlock marine is widely used on vehicles by guys that are mobile. Why? Because that product in particular is designed to be used in outdoor conditions because it is for boats, has a very high solid content. But the solvent in beadlock marine in particular is different than the solvent in beadlock pro and beadlock black, being that has a longer flash time so that it's more workable in outdoor environments. So if you want more information on the solid content in our coatings, we've come out with a brochure I did last month. It's on our website. It breaks down the solid contents in each one of our coatings so you can know what's a good fit for what you're wanting to apply it to, because solid content is going to determine performance. So you can definitely check that out on the website. So Colby, if you slide around right here, you can really see this coating rainbowing up very nicely. So we're gonna give this about 2 minutes because that's what we did on this lower panel. All right, let's go over the swipe test again. 2 fingers. So hopefully you guys can pick that up good in the camera. You can see how it's really nice and clear, no smearing. We'll level this off. A question you guys might have is how many towels will we go through on the course of a job leveling? I know you guys can see I have 3 out right now. On this Sprinter van, we'd probably go through 2 sets of those, but we'll really just watch how loaded our towels get. And the way we notice that is as we're leveling off the coating, if we come into an area midway through the job, 3/4 through the job, and our towels are pretty loaded up, we're just gonna use discretion and swap out to a new set. Typically the third towel can last the entire job because that one is not getting as loaded up with product. It's more just for that final cleanup. If you're working with somebody in a shop environment, something we like to do is one person is doing the initial leveling with the towel. Second person comes back with the second towel. And then the first person comes back that has that first initial towel, and they're doing the third and final pass. So you're just getting 2 sets of eyes during the entire leveling process. Okay, third towel. overlap. Light arm pressure. One thing I like to do also is my pointer finger when I have a seam and I'm coming through right here, I will take my pointer finger and I'll push it down into that seam to make sure I'm leveling that coating perfectly in the seam. Same, even this little body line right here, that seam, pointer finger, tuck it up into that. That is a very sneaky area where you can get high spots. Because think about it, if I just came through right here, my towel is making primary contact in this area and on top of that body line. Until I push my pointer finger down in there, I'm not even really making contact down in that body line. There we go. All right, so as we wrap up, let me give you guys a quick overview on our coatings leveling time frame. You have relock, which is more of our express coating, and a reload coating for vehicles that have already been coated and they're coming in for an annual maintenance. That is gonna have your longest time frame before you have to level. Beadlock Pro is what we use today. You saw that time frame here in the shop. That's gonna be relative to your environment. Beadlock Marine is gonna always give you a slightly longer time frame before you have to level because of those unique solvents in it. Remember I touched on that during the video. And then Beadlock Black is going to have a very average leveling time frame, very similar to Beadlock Pro. Please check out the website, check out that coating brochure, gives you a full breakdown on the solvent levels and helps you choose the right coating for your job. As always, please leave us a question, comment, call us, email us. We're happy to help. We hope that gives you some good tips. We'll see you next time.